Really, what I want to share is not just about my running fitness, but really that one moment in your life, which is going to be the turning point, and how each one of you, like me, can become a seed for change. A seed for change to connect lives, to turn, to transform, and to touch lives. I think that is very critical because at our point in life, we very think individually. We think we have so many struggles. We have work pressures. We have studies. We have dreams, but it gets limited to that. And 2 years back, when of course she very graciously introduced me about my running and fitness, I wasn't so. I started my running and fitness journey about 2.5 years when my young son of 8.5 years told me, Mom, I wanted to be physically fit. When I asked him, what do you want from me? And that got me thinking. And that became the turning point in my life. And here I am today as an ambassador of goodwill to promote health and fitness amongst women. And I loved what Neha was saying. And why women and why health and fitness? Because it's so important for us to take our life seriously. And this does not exclude the men, because I personally believe it's he for she. Every man stand up for the woman. Every man should be behind the success of the health and fitness for the women. Because only then the circle of life is going to get influenced and the women are going to come out and take their life seriously. Not that they're not taking it, but we don't spend time. We don't spend enough time and energy in focusing on ourselves. And it's so important that all you young ones, including me, I'm still 21, and make that difference. So yes, running is important. More than running, it's the passion. And it's the passion that I'm going to really talk about. Why passion? Because passion overarches everything that we do. It gives you that high to accept who you are, to accept what you want to be, and not just who you want to be, but keep bettering yourself every moment of your life. So I'm here today to really co-create with you. I'm not here to talk or share my journey. I'm here to learn as much as you are here to share from me. I'm here to make a difference as much as you're going to add value in my life. And I'm going to be here to take away a lot, not just leave behind for you. So that's really where I'm coming from. And that brings me to my very favorite topic of, do you want to be a fox or you want to be a hedgehog? Fox? I knew most of us will say a fox. Why? Okay, there's someone who's saying a hedgehog, and that's brilliant. Why a fox and why a hedgehog? A fox, as we all know, is very sleek, cunning, beautiful, always strategizing. And a hedgehog is this poor little soul sitting in the corner, small, and not really very attractive. But the hedgehog is the one who knows what he's best at and to defend himself. He's the one who's very focused. He has that vision. The fox will do everything possible, snatch, play dead. At the end of it, he always gets defeated with a nose full of spines. That's where I'm coming from. Be a hedgehog. Learn the way you can be from good to great. And to be from good to great is that one passion that you require in your life. If you look at your life and if you divide it in 3 circles, understand your passion. How that passion is going to make a difference, not only in your life, in others' life too. What is that you're passionate about? Why do we do what we do? And it is a very deep soul-searching question. Everything that we do today, why are we doing it? Is it because we are supposed to do it? Is it because it's mandatory? This is the process of our life, we have to do it. But if you dig deeper into it and understand why you're doing what you're doing, you'll always take it to the next level. And that's how running has helped me and has helping a lot of us, because it really opens up. It opens up a lot of possibilities and infinite opportunities for you. It opened a whole new world for me. And today it keeps me motivated. I wake up at 4:30 in the morning, I go for my run, I go to my office, I take care of my kids, I come here for a TEDx talk, and I still have the energy of going because I'm very passionate about something that I love doing. And that passion then seeps into all areas of life, whether it is studying, whether it is work, and you will fall in love with your work. Otherwise life becomes very routine, boring, monotonous, and you will always find excuses not to work. But yes, You will always find a reason and you will never give it your 100% best. And it's that passion which is going to give you that high. And it's only not about being good or best, but how can you better yourself every moment? Every moment you're trying to, create something for yourself which is going to have a far-reaching impact on the others too. As an ambassador, as I keep saying that, we went across, we spoke to women, we understood the backgrounds they came from. It is so inspiring. What I go through or what you go through is minuscule in the larger scheme of life. And what the best thing that can happen is you become more receptive. You learn to accept yourself, which very rarely we do. We very rarely, accept who we are. And we always find faults with ourselves, especially in our society. Body shaming is the biggest issue. There is so much of, negativity attached to it. There's so much of low confidence. But the minute you take a step back and you say, so what? It doesn't matter. You learn to let it go. That's where the difference comes in. And I think that's very, very important again for us to realize that, where do we want to go? How are we headed? How are we creating that, passion in our lives? What is the second circle, as I say, is what are you best at? Do we know what really we are good at? We're so, trying to procrastinate always, and we're never happy with who we are. But it is a very powerful thing. It's okay not to be best at certain things. But it is very powerful to be good at certain things and focus on that. This particular concept that I'm talking about, the hedgehog concept, was actually written by Jim Collins in his book, Good to Great. And the reason I'm using this example here is you all are going to get into the corporate world. And this book also helped me to tide me over the last couple of years that have been very challenging. And he talked about how organizations can be good to great, how organizations need to focus on the core areas, their vision, and strategize accordingly. And organizations are made of people. And people make organizations. And we are those people. If we apply that concept in our life, it's going to make a huge difference. It's going to make a huge difference not only to those organizations we work for, but the society at large. And then we're going to have many hedgehogs out there making a difference. I think that's very important to understand. What are we driven by, who we want to become, then how we can be the better versions of ourselves, as I said. And that also comes from the fact knowing, your strengths and weaknesses. Are we really trying to understand? Are we really trying to figure out, what are our strengths? How are we playing with that? How are we taking it to the next level? Like I said, when we work across the women groups across India, I come across cancer survivors. I come across visually impaired girls. I come across baby-wearing mothers. I come across little girls, have big dreams. And it is very inspiring, especially if you see the visually impaired girls running. It's unbelievable. They have sighted runners as volunteers. The sighted runners are actually supposed to help them to go on the route, but they are faster than the sighted runners. The sighted runners who are regular runners, have a better pace, but their enthusiasm, their zeal for life to make it to the finishing line in a better time it supersedes even the sighted runners, because they're running from their heart. They're seeing from their heart. They're running with a passion. They're running to make a difference. And they're running to show to the world that I can do it. That is again very important. That if you can do it, anybody else can do it. In April of last year, I was in Goa and I was told that you're going to run Mumbai to Pune in November by Milind Soman, who of course we all know, and we are all inspired by him. And I just looked at him and I said, are you serious? I'm sure you're kidding. So, he's the Ultraman who just did 517 kilometers in Florida. And he said, no, I'm dead serious. And I know you're going to do it. I said, no ways. I mean, I just do 21 kilometers. At the most, I've done an ultra run, which is morning to evening, 12 hours. And the longest I have done is about 63 kilometers. And this is 160 kilometers you're talking about and over the cards. So he said, yeah, so I said, okay. And it got me thinking. And I said, okay, I'll take up this challenge. And that's how my training started. And from April of last year, I began running 5 kilometers every day. which sounds very easy, but it isn't, because you have to do it every day, and it's not fun. And I love running for fun, the pleasure, putting on your music. It's my me time. And then slowly I got into the groove, and I said, "This is very powerful. If I can do it at my age with my background, it's a strong message across to the people out there." That anybody can do it. We get so daunted by our own inhibitions, our own limitations, that we can't do it. All sorts of things. And I said, I'm just going to park that aside. Let me at least do the training. And that was the beauty of it. The 4 months that we trained very religiously was even better than the ultimate journey and the destination, because those 4 months opened us to a lot of things. So then I told Milind, I went back and told him, I'm not going to run alone. I'm going to make it an all-women team. And 3 women ran, 3 of us with similar, profiles, all working women, mothers of 2 children, jobs, hectic life, lots of challenges. I have had a health background. One of my other friends, she was having a facial paralysis. So we have actually taken up this to look into the face of life and say that, it's okay, doesn't matter. We will still move on. And those 3 days were so exciting. So when I was coming here, I was thinking about my 2.5 days of journey of doing the 160 kilometers with climbing the ghats. And the one message that kept coming back to me was, keep moving, don't stop. However tired you are, just keep moving, don't stop. Even if you run at a slow speed, you walk a bit, but don't stop. And that's exactly what kept us going. And in that journey, you realize that, yes, there was a crew, there are people who are going to support you, and there were, of course, a lot of people who were cheering for us. But most of the journey, you were alone, and that's when things start opening up to you. And then you realize that it is your limitations that really stops you. If you go beyond that, if you go beyond your physical and mental limitations, then, there's absolutely nothing to stop you. So just be unstoppable, just be fearless, because I think that will take you to a different world altogether. That will take you to a different level altogether. And the third important aspect of this hedgehog concept is, which I personally believe in, is what is your value engine? What is that you're going to drive? What is that drives you to stay awake the long hours? What is that drives you to not sleep in the night? What is that drives you to get up early in the morning? I think you need to figure that out. Because it is that value that you want to derive for yourself, and that value that you want to give back. It could be financial, social, emotional, psychological, it could be anything. But that is, again, going to create, a huge impact in your life, which will help you to streamline, focus your thoughts, and, give it back with a bang. Because ultimately, if you just keep doing things without any, impact on it, on the people around you, on yourself, you're just going to lead a mediocre life, which is also fine. But when you reflect back, when you turn around and say, is that who I was? Is that what I want to be? The answer, the immediate answer is going to be no, a big no. And we're all, transitioning from one life to the other in a period of 60 years. And what happens? 1/3 of our life goes in just figuring out who we are and what we want to be. And most of us in the audience are at that threshold. I have probably spent 2/3 of my life figuring that out. But I'm happy that I still have that 1/3 of my life to, find my sweet spot, as I call it, and work on that sweet spot. Because that sweet spot is going to give you that kind of a high that you've never faced. And it will help you to not only be a better person or a better human being, but you will, go back with a very clear conscience that you have given something back to the society. You have made that small difference. You have touched one life. So today when people write to me and say that, you post every day, you run every day, we are very inspired by you, that's my personal best. In the running parlance, as runners, we're always trying to show off, I'm a runner, and we bring in the running conversation everywhere. Our personal best is always about timing. It's about speed. It's about endurance. But for me, that's not my personal best. My personal best is when someone writes to me and says that you inspired me. It has made a difference to me. In my case, it's mostly health and fitness. So people say, I've taken up health. I have started running. I have done my first 10K. I have lost weight. So I always tell weight loss is just a byproduct. It's about the fitness. It's about being physically and mentally fit. It's about 360 degrees. It's about, having a very, very positive approach to life. Then you'll realize that all these small things are very, very insignificant, that you are a minuscule part in this entire universe, and whatever you may be going through is so insignificant. And then you learn to drop the word struggle from your life. I dropped the word struggle. I accepted I'm a single mom. I was in denial. But when I started running and people accepted me who I was without even asking me my background, it just dropped my baggage. I started opening up. I started writing. I started expressing. And I said, I'm not a victim anymore. We were not born in this life to be victims of anything. Nor circumstances, nor people, nor victims of our own, thinking and thought processes. We are born here to be fearless. And I think this generation, all of you, it's so inspiring that we didn't have such opportunities when I was a student, but you're getting this opportunity to learn, inspire, and share, and have speakers who are coming and explaining to you and sharing their lives with you. And it's no longer about just academics and marks. It's about having a better quality of life and being a better person, a better version of yourself. And I think that's what it is. How will you dare to outdo? And that outdoing is outdoing with yourself. The outdoing is not outdoing with your friend or batchmate or in the corporate world. It's not about your subordinate or it's not about your boss. That will happen. There's nothing stopping you. If you're passionate, if you're in love with your work, if you fall in love with your work every day, that will happen. It's about positive affirmations. It's about how you visualize where you want to be. It's about how you're connecting your mind, body, and soul. How are you in sync and in alignment, with your goals and your aspirations. But if you don't go beyond who you are, and if you don't become that seed of change to begin with in your lives, you are actually depriving a whole lot of people out there who are waiting to reach out to you. And I always keep saying this, that how do you keep yourself motivated? What is that fire within you that needs to be burning? That is, taking you to, again, a higher level. And that fire comes from the fact that you want to outdo yourself. You want to dare yourself. As I said, I was never a sports person. I never thought I would run. And today I did 160 kilometers. I'm going to do another 42 kilometers on Saturday. I started doing a lot of things. The whole world opened up. I got into adventure sports. And that's what it does to you. Your passions take you to another level. They make you realize, it's like, a magnet. You are passionate about something. It could be anything. It could be running. It could be singing. It could be music. And I'm sure a lot of us who are my age would realize that you give up. And then you realize that 20 years have gone, 10 years have gone, and, where are you? And a lot of people actually get back to the grassroots. And a lot of people have taken those sabbaticals, want to spend quality time and quality of life with their families or, with themselves, soul searching. But you guys, and this is my message to you, that you go out in the world tomorrow, don't give up on that. Thank you very much.